Hey everyone, Matt Horspool here. Welcome back to the channel. Today is a super exciting moment for me because why? I can actually put some new content out. It's been a long time since my last video. Managed to have a couple of children in between and lots of travel and bought a house, so it's all been pretty chaotic. So thank you very much for bearing with me, and yeah, super excited to bring some new stuff out and show you what I've been up to over the past few years. Now, I'd originally planned on putting this video out a year after the OM-1 came out, but as I mentioned before, it got a little bit busy, so I think it actually kind of works better now because I've even had a longer period of time that I've been using this camera and a lot more jobs and a lot more recreational kind of shoots as well, so I can give you an even more solid I guess opinion on why I think this camera is perfect for the kind of work that I do. So it's going to be like a year and a half or a little bit more review or overview of my work using this camera. Now, for those of you who are veterans to the channel, you know that I like to go into quite a bit of depth in my reviews. This one's going to be a little bit different. It's going to be more like the video I put out on the Olympus cameras for professional work. It's going to be about kind of like the OM-1 for commercial work and commercial projects, and going over some of the work that I've done, showing you where you can go and have a look at that, and then some of the images and video clips that I've taken that I think are my favorite of the projects. And yeah, so you can get a bit of an idea on what is possible with this camera setup and OM and Olympus lenses. What I found on YouTube is that a lot of reviewers, a lot of YouTube reviewers can really talk about the specs and what the camera can do and how it might fit into workflows, all different types of workflows, but rarely do they ever show their commercial professional work, show examples. So for me, that is a bit, as a viewer, I find that really tricky to make a decision about a camera or a particular system if I'm actually not seeing what it can do and I'm merely hearing someone talk about it. So hopefully these images will really cement. So hopefully these images will really help you make your decision. So one of my favorite jobs that comes up twice a year is my mountain design shoot. It's an adventure shoot for an adventure clothing brand here in Australia, and we get to go to all sorts of cool places in Australia and film lifestyle, trekking, adventure, a bit of urban stuff, all different kinds of material. And I shoot all of the video for that, and my good friend Harrison shoots all of the stills for it. And not long after receiving the OM-1, I actually went to Tasmania, beautiful part of Australia, and that's where I was shooting with my Blackmagic 6K Pro on that one, and I was actually using the OM-1 as a B cam and one that can be rocking on a gimbal because it is nice and small, and I really wanted to test out this new 10-bit footage as well. These shoots are super run and gun. The locations change all the time. The weather is incredibly bad down in Tasmania. Even in the middle of summer, it can just be rain, hail, sleet, snow, you name it. You have to be ready for everything, and obviously the Blackmagic is no good for that, so having the OM-1 there was really helpful. If you haven't seen it already, just check out the link up above there somewhere and you can have a look at the full little hero wrap-up clip that I shot. So interspersed in there's Blackmagic and OM-1 clips. Now a little bit of disclaimer on the video footage of that I shot down here. I actually, when I was running around, I had thought that I'd put it on 10-bit H.265, but it turns out when I got back, I had only shot it in 8-bit H.264, and I was still pretty bloody impressed with the quality of the footage. And really, I don't think that on a screen that you're probably viewing this on, that you'll be able to tell the difference. Can you? And when we got down there, the weather was actually, as I mentioned before, pretty horrid. So for a lot of it, particularly the trekking scenes, I ended up shooting exclusively with the OM-1 because I could literally just keep it out with one lens, might have been the 12-100, and just let it get wet. It meant that I wasn't missing shots. Now, I could have had, the Blackmagic definitely is going to have better image quality, but it's not suited to this kind of environment. So having a camera that is a tool for this particular environment, whilst it may not have as strong a codec as something else more expensive or more suited to a cinema type of shoot, it was the one that could actually get the job done. I could shoot 12 to 100. I had my telephoto, I had the wide, and it could produce great shots. So some of the gear that I used for this shoot, I will let you have a look now. And these were some of the settings that I had. Shooting for video, as I mentioned before, H.264 was not meant to be. It was meant to be H.265 10-bit. So normally for these type of shoots, I shoot manual focus all the time because I just don't trust autofocus on any camera system to give that real organic feel. However, when I was doing some of these shots, like the running shot, when I'm running with a gimbal, it is impossible to it is impossible to manual focus and run and not trip over. So this is where the OM-1 really came into play, running after one of the talent, locking on autofocus on their back, and then all I had to worry about was not tripping over. And I think it worked really well. It's nice and light. I left the IBIS on, okay, just to also balance with the RS2. So I had I had triple IBIS almost, really, if you consider the axis of the RS2, the internal stabilization of the OM-1, and the lens stabilization of the 12 to 100. So it was pretty rock solid smooth. So overall, I was pretty blown away that I was able to match the footage, 8-bit footage, with some of the Blackmagic in DaVinci Resolve, and really couldn't tell the difference, especially for a lot of the social cuts that were going to be just played on Instagram, or even in the Hero though, you could hardly tell. Using ProMIS filters as well really helped soften up that digital kind of look, because I think that the footage is a little bit over sharp. I did use OM Log 400 and I just graded it manually because I don't really like using the LUT, so it was easy to match with manual grading. All right, now on to the Ford job. Now this job happened actually maybe a week or two after Tasmania, so it was a it was a big job that we'd planned. Second time working with Ford on this, and this time we were going to create like a bit of like a lifestyle adventure kind of clip and a series of images as well, out at a beautiful part of Central Australia that I'd been to before. Harrison had never been there before, but I knew that it was going to be stunning out there. And basically the idea was we were going to be shooting with this gear. Now, having been to the Outback before, I knew that this was the perfect place to shoot four-wheel drive content. We've got long, dusty roads, beautiful burning sunrises and sunsets, the ability to use massive telephoto lenses to really compress the scenes and get some of those car shots that are super unique, because there is just such big open space to use those telephoto lenses. There's beautiful wildlife out there. We had emus, kangaroos, eagles, all of that kind of really typical Australian wildlife out there, all in the one spot. And now it doesn't typically rain out there either, but we had this amazing weather system come through, and it just bucketed rain, meant we had these huge cloud formations, and just made for some amazing dramatic content. Now this was actually the first time that I got to use the 150 to 400 Pro. Now I can safely say that I am absolutely in love with it. If it wasn't so expensive, I would buy it. But I'll just have to stick to borrowing it for the time being, because it is just such a beautiful, versatile lens. It is light, it is small, comparatively small anyway. And all of the guys that I was shooting with, we were Fuji users and 2 Sony users, they were absolutely blown away at how versatile this lens was paired with the OM-1, not only for stills, but for shooting video. Now we were hand holding at the full extension using the 2x teleconverter, which is like a 2000mm equivalent lens. And because light was fleeting and we were moving around, we didn't want to change lenses in the dust and whatnot. I just literally kept that on one of the bodies, and we were using it for stills and video, and being able to handhold a 2000mm and film, it was incredible. Like the dual IBIS that works there is just outstanding. And really there's no other lens and camera body system like it that's that versatile that we can shoot stills and video. One of the other guys who was assisting would give me the camera, I'd shoot off some stills, and then I'd shoot some video, I'd give it back to him, he'd shoot some BTS with it, I'd go off and film some stuff with the Blackmagic. It was just such a good lens to have, and working out there in these really dusty environments where cars are spitting up dirt and mud and everything at the camera, there was no issue with weather sealing. So again, having that, like the extremely high burst rate and the car tracking was phenomenal out there, so hats off. So overall, the camera performed amazingly well for the stills component, and we mainly shot BTS with it for the video, but there was a handful of clips that we used in the main film. But for stills, my god, this camera was good. Paired with the zoom lenses, it was just so easy to use, and having that outstanding IBIS and autofocus was just, yeah, it's incredible. I'm going to skip to fast forward a little bit and onto another Ford job, just so if anyone's interested in the automotive stuff, it's kind of all paired together. But this time we were shooting again for Ford and going to create like a bit of a lifestyle film of adventure between 4 friends, even though there was a few of them hadn't met before, but by and large they all were just a family by the end of it. And we just wanted to kind of follow them around in these lower model Ford vehicles to show that we could still access beautiful places, adventurous places, using a lower spec vehicle. And that means the idea for the brief was that we would create this film, and we were going to be using this gear, and also provide a suite of stills images as well. Now on these shoots, it's really difficult when the light is fleeting and we only have a certain amount of time, because it's very difficult to want to be shooting video and stills at the same time. For anyone who's done that before, they know which do you prioritize. So having this small camera, being able to just sling it around my back whilst carrying a bigger camera for video was very, very handy. I would just have the Pro Primes on there for all of the lifestyle shots, and again, like the 12-100 for the car driving shots. Having a small system with a big zoom, throw it in the bottom of the car, doesn't matter or throw it in the sand, it was all good. We could just sit wherever and it was always there for when I needed it. So you can just have a look at some of these images anyway. All of the shots you can have a look on the website, or my favorite ones are here. I won't go too much more into the Ford stuff because it's basically like the first one. Yeah, you just have a look at the shots and you tell me. Any good? Okay, on to the Somnium shoot now. For anyone who has been following me along on the channel, they might have seen that I have done a super high-end, I guess, property development that was out in a beautiful part of New South Wales, 360-degree views over National Park and lake and into the ocean. Incredibly stunning. Very, very high-end place. And the client wanted me to come back, and we hadn't finished the job because some of the parts of the landscaping hadn't been finished, and they also wanted to get some of the lifestyle shots with people in it this time. Now, this is one of those shoots where the client was super happy with having me take creative freedom, and they wanted something that kind of look a bit more editorial, a bit more filmic. And it was really good because we could get one of the ex-National Parks guys that came out and was helping out doing some of management of the vegetation around there. So we followed him around and got some beautiful lifestyle shots from that, and also filmed and shot indoors for some of the property shots. And so this is some of the gear that I used. Now for this shoot, we didn't actually film much video inside because we'd already pretty much nailed all of that. But for stills, we did. So this is where I would start using some exposure bracketing, which is easily set up in the OM-1. When we're shooting indoors, there's such high contrast between inside and outside. So shooting a single image on any camera is just, the dynamic range would just need to be enormous to shoot that with bright, middle of the day light outside. So bracketing, I would bracket like 5 different exposures, using the remote, the wide remote from the OM-1, using the 8-25 for most of it because I was shooting at like f8 to make sure everything was sharp, f8 to f11 I think, to make everything in focus and tack sharp. And For some of the tighter shots, I'd use like the 25mm at the 1.2 to provide a bit of depth in between, shooting between different items to give it depth. So using the bracketing, then I would then put it into Lightroom, merge them together and end it that way. So overall, I think that the OM-1 on this type of shoot is quite perfect actually. It's nice and small. Yes, I was using a tripod, so I guess the weight is kind of not really an issue. For bracketing, you need to have a tripod, otherwise the misalignment can be quite severe. So most of it was shot on the tripod. I'd have the leveling meters on so I could tell when things were level. Using that 8-25 was such a great lens for architecture because I could shoot at 8mm, but then if I needed to get something tighter, I didn't have to go and change the lens. I would just zoom it. It's brilliant. And to be able to use polarizer straight on the front of it as well, very, very handy for architecture kind of shots where you need to cut out that those reflections and glare from massive panes of window glass. All right, so weddings. Now, I don't shoot a lot of weddings, and I basically only shoot weddings for friends and family who request it, I guess. Not because I don't enjoy them, because I just generally don't have time to book them that far ahead, and it cuts out commercial time. So when I do shoot them though, I do really enjoy it, particularly shooting stills. Stressful, yes. If you want some tips on shooting weddings, check out my video above for shooting weddings on Micro Four Thirds. Since filming that though, I have been using the OM-1, and it really, for lack of a better term, has been a game changer for me, mainly because of the autofocus. Like the eye autofocus and face tracking on this camera is now just insane. And shooting on the Pro Primes is just tack sharp, so fast, it never misses a beat. It's a brilliant wedding camera kit in my opinion. The low light ability is so much better than it used to be, and with Lightroom as it is now, noise is hardly even a factor. I shoot at ISO 6400 if I need to, and it's no real issue because the client is getting an image to look on their phone, to look on their laptop, maybe on the TV. They're not pixel peeping like you and I might, and there's no issue with noise these days that can't be dealt with in post. So as I mentioned in my wedding tutorial video before, I always shoot with two camera bodies. So that means two OM-1s. I pretty much always have the 17mm f1.2 on one and the 45mm 1.2 on the other. I just think shooting at 1.2 here just gives a really good balance of depth and sharpness and speed. There are times though, say for instance in the ceremony, particularly in an outdoor ceremony, where I'll bang on the 40-150 so I can stand back a bit further, get out of the way of people so I'm not kind of the center of attention, because I think wedding photographers should never be the center of attention, and it just gives that bit of extra reach and coverage, so I can give something a bit different than just the 45, and then the 45 will go back on later and it just pretty much stays on for the rest of the night. So overall, I could talk about weddings all day and the different types of settings and setups that I have. If that's something you're interested in, drop a comment below and I might try and find time to create that, or just drop me a message if you have any questions on that. But really, the OM-1 now has instilled so much confidence in me to shoot more weddings that I didn't have before using some of the older models. I am going to be saying yes to more because I have the gear. Okay, even though it's not all about the gear, it kind of is about the gear for me. And I can go in there with a Micro Four Thirds camera and still cover an entire wedding event, whether it's night or day, and still get great shots the clients are super happy about. Because in the end, it's not about whether I'm happy with the shots, it's about whether the client is happy with the shots. And again, I've never had them come back and say anything but super positive remarks about that. Okay, on to a big shoot. And I think this is quite an important shoot for me and kind of for the camera system, because this is Vivid Sydney. And Vivid Sydney is something that I've been going to for many, many years. Many of you have probably heard of it internationally, definitely locally. Massive big light show that happens over, I think it's like 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks. Hundreds of thousands of people come to see this thing. It is incredible. The weather is always super cold and wet, but it is really, really cool. Just all these light installations spread around the city, but it's at night. And now Micro Four Thirds cameras, not known to be the best things to use at night. Now this actually, when I was asked to do this shoot, which was a big one, it was like 7 days or 7 nights of shooting. There's high pressure because this is from a client that everyone wants to work with, which is Destination New South Wales. It's also somewhere where millions of people will potentially see the shots. And they go onto this like content library where media and journalists and everyone from around the world can access and purchase and use to promote Sydney and the event. The images have to be top notch. And I will admit, when I first was asked to do this, I was like, oh, this camera is good, but is it the right tool for this job, knowing that it is Micro Four Thirds sensor, and we're going to be shooting incredibly low light situations. We're going to be shooting where the light installations are really, really bright, but then there's the darkness of the night, and then there's beams of light in the sky. How am I going to do this, and is it going to be okay? So I thought, as a backup, I had my D750, but I thought, you know what, I'll borrow one of my friends' Nikon Z7 Mark IIs. Okay, big megapixel, full frame. I had some full frame lenses already for Nikon that would fit across on it. That I'll use that as a backup. And this was basically the shoot kit that I took with me every night. So my brief was a little bit different to some of the landscape guys who were just there to get the composite shots, the absolute bangers. Check out Daniel Tran, phenomenal photographer based in Sydney. Good friend of mine, super talented. Check out his work here. He shoots all of the super high-end hero stuff. And what Destination New South Wales wanted me to do was capture like in-between moments using people, the unforeseen kind of things you might stumble upon when walking around in near the installations. How did I find using these two different cameras when I started to shoot? Undoubtedly, the Z7 with the bigger sensor had cleaner images straight off the bat at higher ISOs. It's just physics. But what I found, especially for the type of shooting that I was doing with people and where I had to change perspectives all the time, I wasn't just on a tripod, I wasn't just shooting a static landscape thing. I found that the autofocus was just so bad that I couldn't shoot anything but in manual. And the IBIS in it was just no good for hand holding exposures really at all at night. And I was getting blurry shots unless I was shooting 6400 or above. And I actually found myself just getting so frustrated with how bad the autofocus was compared to the OM-1 that I stopped using it after the second night. I had it with me just as a backup, but I'd stopped using it. The guys just carried it. And I just shot with 2 of the OM-1s all the time. I had the 12-100 on, I think, and then I had some of the primes or one of the wide angle lenses to just shoot some different kinds of scenes. And because I was using a tripod, the images and having the smaller sensor gave me so much more narrow depth of field for when I was using it on a tripod that I would get tack sharp shots at longer exposures, and I wouldn't have to use the tripod as well because the IBIS was so good. I could walk around and do these night shots handheld and they'd still be tack sharp. It was brilliant. So if you've seen some of my other videos, like the portrait shoot I did with Lisa, you know I love using one of the cool features inside the OM-1, which is the multiple exposure. Now this was featured in some of the other cameras as well, but I really, really love using it in the OM-1. It's super simple to turn on and use, and it allowed me to capture cool shots like this, where I could just create some beautiful bokeh out of focus and then layer him in with some sharper shots. So overall, I was absolutely stoked with how this shoot turned out, despite my stress and absolute exhaustion during the shoot. The images, I think turned out really, really good. a lot of the images ended up making some of the best of albums from Destinations New South Wales, including one of the images made the top 10 that got put out everywhere to marketing. And that's saying something, because this camera was competing against the R5s, it's competing against the Z8s, kind of those kind of cameras shooting commercially in the dark, R6s, low light cameras, Sonys. And then here's this Micro Four Thirds camera that is also shooting really awesome tack sharp shots that can punch above its weight in low light. Yes, it has its quirks. If there's some situations where maybe like a model's moving or something in the dark, it's probably not going to be the right thing. But for the type of shots that I was capturing, where there's not much movement in the person, I had a bit more control, and I could use some of these pro primes. I really was pleasantly surprised in what I could capture, and the versatility and the variety. Sorry, touched the microphone. The variety of shots that I could capture using this system. I don't know. Drop a comment below and let me know if what you think, and if you, I don't know, have shot anything like this before using a Micro Four Thirds camera commercially. All right, Hawaii. Oh boy, this one was a biggie, and probably go down as one of my favorite shoots that I've ever done. So what was the shoot? Towards the end of 2022, I was asked by an agency called Wear Explorers if I would like to put forward to be a photographer joining a small crew. It's going to be Taylor as the model and writer. It's going to be Matt as a DP, Lex as producer, and Jen the client from Hawaii Tourism. And we're going to go around the island of Hawaii, also known as the Big Island. We're going to be covering all sorts of things. There was going to be hiking, coffee, food, diving, all of boats, helicopter rides. It was a dream shoot, and I managed to get on there as the photographer. So going into this, I was so confident that I had the right camera system for the job because of the diverse nature of everything here. We were having to be packing light. I needed to take a variety of different lenses, which meant I needed a small bag because no one else was going to carry it for me. I was shooting underwater, which I'm very, very confident in doing. More into that in a minute. Shooting from helicopters, so we needed to have telephoto lenses. I needed to shoot lots of lifestyle content, so I had my prime lenses. I had my drone because we were allowed to drone in some of the spots as well. But I could keep it all in one little bag. And being such a small crew, it was all run and gun. This means that we don't have time to just be swapping our lenses all the time and setting up different scenes. I'd see something, I'd need to be working in with Matt. I just need to bang off some shots. He would need to do it. We'd move around and then we'd move on. It was really, really run and gun. And again, it was just so good being able to have two OM-1 bodies slung around me and just shoot a variety of different shots, no matter what the weather, and still be able to capture amazing shots. Now, it's no secret that I do not particularly enjoy photographing food. Not so because I don't like doing that as such as a skill, but I'm just not very good at it. But mainly it's like the plating and arranging and this stuff. But luckily for this shoot, it wasn't too bad in terms of that. I was just shooting what I could see with the chef, and then the plating up, and then eating as well. What was difficult though is that we were having to shoot inside a restaurant that was full of customers, and we just have to move around. So that was very, very tricky. High ISO, no lights. In the dark, I was tricky. So this is the gear that I took. So for this type of work, people who have not used a smaller system really don't understand just how tiring it can be carrying a bigger system around for 10 hours a day, 7 days, or even more. Like being able to carry these two bodies and all of these lenses and work this long and not be tired at the end of it. Yes, we're tired, but I'm not physically tired from carrying gear. It's really liberating. And the fact that I could also deliver way more shots for the client to choose from because I could carry more lenses and get a wider variety of shots because I could have two camera bodies with two different lenses on there. It gave the coverage so much more breadth, and that allowed me to deliver more images for them to choose from. Okay, sometimes you talk about quality over quantity, but what if you could have a higher quantity of quality? Well, you can kind of do that with a smaller system, I think. So for all the lifestyle shots, again, I shot pretty much the 17mm 1.2, 45mm 1.2. Again, tack sharp. The eye autofocus is brilliant. Never missed a beat with Taylor. Having that high burst was also really good for when she was doing some of her little action shots. And it was just a brilliant pairing. And because we were doing lots of trekking and kind of landscape shots, the 12-100 lived on the body for that time. It's just the most versatile lens that there is, in my opinion. I could shoot the long exposure stuff. I could shoot some of the nighttime scenes. I could compress into the volcanoes, but also get that wide expanse as well. It's a great camera pairing to have with that lens. And then again, when we're in the helicopter, being able to shoot telephoto and still get those wide shots. On one of my bodies, I had the 7-14mm, so I could get the interior of the helicopter, and then I'd have the 12-100 on the other, so I could get those telephotos. And because the door's off, it's super windy and shaky, but having that dual IBIS, it was just rock solid. I could film as well from in there if I wanted to. Still get some of the wide shots, not as ultra wide, but still get wide shots, but also punch in and have it be rock solid still because of the IBIS. We were shooting in midday a lot, and the midday light when you're sitting in the water can be incredibly bright. And I'm one of those kind of photographers who likes to use the LCD all the time, because I can use my peripheral vision to kind of see around me and not bump into things, not trip over something and fall into the water. And the LCD is brilliant, it's super bright. But in times like this, I found myself actually going to the viewfinder more and more. And now I've gone back to using the viewfinder a lot more, because the refresh rate and the resolution of the OM-1's viewfinder was such a big step up from the previous models that it's now at a point where you kind of forget that you're not using an optical or viewfinder. It's just that good. So I won't really go over the underwater component, mainly because, not because I didn't love it. It was probably one of my favorite underwater shoots I've ever done, but because the housing for my OM-1 hadn't arrived yet. More on that a bit later. We'll be doing a bit of a review on that housing sometime soon. But I had to bring my trusty EM1 Mark II. Yes, it's an older camera, and use it inside the Olympus housing. And I was pretty confident, having shot lots of underwater before. Well, I mean, I teach it, and I was pretty confident in the shoot, but this was easily the most challenging shoot that I've ever done. The pitch black everywhere. You film in manta rays, the spinning, and the underside of their bellies is super bright, and the canoe, they pump down these huge LEDs into the water, which attracts the phytoplankton, which attracts the mantas. But it creates such a big contrast in there, and it bounces off the white bellies of the mantas as well. So finding exposure was so hard. It took me like 10 minutes to really dial in the settings, and combining that with freediving. So we're down, I don't know, 5-6 meters, even deeper, waiting for these mantas to turn around and try and come about in these shots into a really aesthetically pleasing shot. It was very tricky, but boy was it fun. And I think some of these images were outstanding, especially for an older camera. I can't wait to use the OM-1 on a shoot like this. I think having that autofocus that is even faster and snappier and better dynamic range is going to be amazing. So overall, I couldn't have been happier with how this project turned out. The client was over the moon. They want me to work with them again. The sheer variety of shots that I could get with this system cover all of the different topics in one shoot. Like, there's not many commercial shoots or photographers that do that, but this camera allowed me to do all of that, bar those pitch black shots. So I was just, yeah, so happy with how the shots turned out, and how I was so confident that I could capture a shot no matter the scene, that it made me, it was a fun, it instilled fun in the whole shoot. Everyone was chilled. I was like running around, yeah, I can get that. The client's happy. We're having an awesome time. What better kind of feeling, this is like why I do this job, is to have those feelings, to have those moments, and having a camera system that can enable me to get that feeling is pretty special. All right, back to some automotive. Second last one. I promise we're nearly over. So, Fonz Moto. This is a bit of a cool partnership that I have with this amazing Australian electric motorcycle company. They've been around for a while. They create these, they started off with these Fonzarelli electric scooters that are super popular in Sydney. They also have this amazing dual sport NKD naked bike as well, that I actually have one, and you may have seen some shots from before, stuff on my socials. It's just a really fun, great kind of company to work with, and I shoot most of their marketing and lifestyle content. Having a camera like the OM-1 is just, like we were talking about before, just really, really pairs perfectly with shoots like this. And being such a small little crew and such a small, I guess, company, really allows me to work closely with the CEO, who also does the producing, Michelle, and we can be super dynamic. We can change, we can move to different spots. We can kind of do what we want, really. And she allows me to have creative freedom. She has the ideas on what shots she wants, but I ultimately have creative freedom on how everything looks aesthetically. I try and give it a certain look for the brand and give it some of that slickness, but also some versatility in the shots as well, to show that these bikes can be used for multiple different purposes. And it really just combines two of my favorite passions, motorcycles and photography. Now, this NKDX you might have seen in the Olympus 20mm review that I did up here. Got some shots using that lens. And this NKDX is what I've got, and it is so insanely fun. I mean, it is fast. People think it looks like a toy. It is not. It is fast, like 0 to 100 k's an hour in just over 3 seconds. That's not messing around. And I've actually set it up as a camera bike, and we're going to be hanging a gimbal off it and a proper arm, having wireless follow focus, all of that. It's coming. So if that's something you're interested in, leave a comment below and make sure you subscribe, and we'll, you'll see how that build is coming along. The OM-1 has come with me on every single one of these shoots, and it is just incredibly versatile and perfect for this, because a lot of the time as well, I'm riding on the back of a bike and I don't want a big camera system with me. It's bumpy as well when we're going over certain terrain. So having that 12 to 100 again, the amazing IBIS, the autofocus performance, being able to use that 12 to 100 at 100 mil and not be butting into the rider is really, really handy. And this is the gear that I generally use on these shoots. So the lifestyle shots kind of speak for themselves in the way they were shot. I pretty much always use the Pro Primes again, shooting in that 1.2, generally all natural light except for this shot, which we did use some off-camera light because the light was just so flat. This was for a magazine shoot, actually, this one. And so the type of shots that the OM-1 and the 12 to 100 really excel at are panning and tracking shots, because of that IBIS and because of that the AI tracking of cars and bikes. It's just so easy. Like, the hit rate is so much higher than it used to be with a camera that doesn't have these features. So I would have the camera, I would set up the bike becoming here, I would have auto tracking on AI, back button focusing, IBIS turned on, and then I would track, bang, 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 shooting all the way. And as I said, the hit rate is so much higher because of that pairing of there's no shake, and there is brilliant autofocus that is tacking on every single time during continuous autofocus. It's just so good. And with some of these shutter drag shots, again, like I'm on the back of the bike, shooting at 100mm, and I'm getting tracking blur shots while riding, or sitting on the back of a bike at the equivalent of 200mm. Like, you show me another system that's going to get that and have the good hit rate at that weight. It's just, there isn't really any. An f4 means nothing because I'm shooting like f8, f11 to make sure that that rider is tack sharp. It doesn't matter about the background depth because we're shooting in like a quarter of a second. The background's blurred. So it is the perfect pairing for these types of shots. So I do also film video on these kind of shoots because it's kind of like a hybrid shoot. Now, I have shot some stuff with OM-1 before. I have found though that the vehicle tracking is too finicky when filming video. Don't know why, but it still jumps around. I've mentioned it to OM. And so I tend to just use my Blackmagic or now the Sony with it, just because I'd rather have, at the expense of the autofocus, I would just shoot it manually and have like the cinema quality stuff because it is going to be used as their commercial marketing. So yeah, it is a bit of a shame that the autofocus in the AI cars is jumps around a bit much, even with different settings, but there is no perfect system and I have other cameras for that particular reason. Overall, I think that the OM-1 is just an absolute beast for motorsports and automotive kind of shooting in general. I know there are a lot of photographers around the world using this camera system for this kind of work. Check out Michael Hurren, he shoots a lot of great stuff in the automotive world, and Fernando, I can't remember his last name, Marmaleo? Sorry, I forgot that wrong, mate. Check out his work. He shoots a lot of great stuff as well in that kind of action sports, automotive bikes kind of realm, using the OM-1. The ruggedness and the ability for it to get down and dirty and use those huge telephoto lenses across a massive 10-hour, 12-hour day is just, it's perfect. All right, on to the last one, and probably one of the bigger ones. I know Hawaii was big, but this is also amazing. So what was the shoot? So many of you who have followed me before know that I absolutely love the polar regions, and I've been very fortunate to shoot with Aurora Expeditions on multiple shoots now in the Arctic and in Antarctica, previously as a commercial photographer, but this time was different. It was been a lifelong passion of mine or goal of mine to try and get down there and work as an expedition guide so this year I managed to get there in February, spend about a month down there as a polar photography expedition guide with Aurora on board their new ship, the Sylvia Earle. And this is like a dream come true. Like, I'm not only taking photographs down there, but I'm like driving the Zodiacs around icebergs. I'm talking to passengers about the wildlife. I'm teaching them how to take amazing photos with whatever camera system they're using. I'm running lectures and running workshops. I'm helping out the day-to-day kind of expedition roles and just learning a whole heap from some like the most amazing top-tier scientists and polar people in the world. It's just the most amazing job. And anyone who's been down there before, worked in a polar region, knows that Antarctica is the wildest place on Earth. Like, it's remote, it's freaking cold sometimes, and the weather is just, it can be bluebird, but then it's just snowed in, it's ice, it's katabatic winds, it is the harshest condition you could possibly shoot in. And that means that you need a camera system that can live up to that. If something fails or water gets in somewhere, you are not getting a replacement. And as a photographer down there, my job is to get the photos no matter what, and also teach. Doesn't matter the conditions. So I was confident, having shot with all of the different Olympus cameras before the OM-1, that this camera, with its better weather sealing rating, could handle the job. And having all of the pro lenses that I needed for this shoot. Again, I was just so confident in what I could capture down there, no matter the weather. There's never even an issue on what the weather condition was. So one particular landing on Elephant Island is particularly memorable for me in that we went and scouted the landing zone before the passengers could get there, and the weather was wild. Like, it was a whiteout. The snow was just buffeting sideways, and the snow would also land on us because it was so warm down there still that it would melt instantly. So everything was drenched. All of our gear was drenched. The lenses were drenched. The cameras drenched. Everything was drenched. So it meant that a lot of the passengers, unfortunately, who don't have the camera gear to use, couldn't shoot with anything but their iPhones. And even then they struggled because obviously they don't have the telephoto lenses, and there's all this amazing wildlife down there, elephant seals and fur seals and all the penguins. It's all there. But because we can't get close to them, your phone can only do so much. And I was walking around with dual bodies. I had the 150-400, which is just the perfect lens to have down there, but also has a huge lens hood to keep the snow off and rain, which is brilliant. And the 12-100 on the other. I could walk around and I was filming and taking photos, no issue whatsoever. And I could get cover wide all the way to super telephoto, but also handheld film. If you haven't seen my Antarctica film before, check it out up here or when you finish, because that was all shot handheld using the OM-1 with the 12-100 and the 150-400, all handheld. Like, come on. So that 150-400, absolute game changer for shooting in the polar regions. The camera itself is the best thing you could ever take down as a photographer in a polar region, but having that lens on there as well just covers so much range. The bird tracking of the OM-1 paired with autofocus speed and reach of that 150-400 is mind-blowing. I had the other photographers down there, passengers on there, and some of the other guides having a go at the bird tracking and at full 400 with the 1.4 teleconverter turned on, and they were tracking and banging off shots that were tack sharp, and they were mind blown. So getting back to the size of the system for this, being a guide, I would have to wear quite a lot of gear, and I would have a huge big float jacket on. I would have my radio, I'd have my dry bag on the back with a whole like medical kind of supplies, and if I then also, and my binoculars, then I would have 2 bodies slung around me the entire time. If I've got huge full frame bodies, which a lot of the other guides have, they get super weighed down. You're standing there for a long time and walking a long time and looking around, your neck can get incredibly sore. But having this small system slung around me, which didn't matter if they were getting banged around or the rain was coming on, it was just so also freeing to have a small system in that situation. It didn't hurt my neck. And a lot of the time when I've carried a bigger system, that is what gives away first, having them slung around your neck for long periods of a day. It was just so sore. But this camera was just brilliant for that. So overall, like, I mean, you just look at the images and you tell me, is there an issue with taking a micro four thirds camera on a job like this? Like, how many commercial shoots do you know where a camera system could cover all of this with the workflow that it has? There's not that many. So guys, that was a long one, I know, but that about wraps it up. There's no technical kind of review coming from me for this. I really just, I think, yeah, while I do technical reviews, I think that it's far better for you just to be able to see the shots that you can get with this camera system using the lenses that you probably already have, or even if they weren't the pro lenses, like, you can still use the premium lenses or Panasonic lenses or whatever, but having this camera is such a big step above the previous ones in my line of work, especially with that autofocus and the 10-bit capability in the video, that it is almost the perfect camera in my line of work. And yeah, I shoot a lot of adventure travel stuff, but as you can see, like in the Hawaii one, there is so many other types of photography and situations where this camera can also excel. It's about you using the tool, but understanding how to get the most out of that tool. And that is something that only comes with practice or a bit of education. Hop on YouTube, send us a message, get out there and practice. I always tell a lot of my students, set them little goals to go out and just practice maybe one different feature of the autofocus, only practice using continuous and then put it into manual and focusing with focus peaking quickly and then back off. It's the best way to understand your camera and its capabilities. And I'm telling you now, this OM-1 can shoot so many different varieties of genres of photography or video that it really is an amazingly powerful camera. And I cannot wait to see what is going to be released next. And if you have any questions, please do drop them in the comments below. I'll endeavor to get back to you as soon as possible. If you did like this, please consider subscribing, because I will aim to get some more content out to you very, very soon, especially around OM and different kinds of shoots that are happening for that one. And yeah, see you in the next one.